Hello and welcome to this month's edition of the So What Box, where we are going to be making a mesh market tote or beach bag. First, we are going to find the center of the piece of webbing by folding the two ends together and moving along until we find the center of the piece. Put a pin in this spot so that we can mark it for later. Next, we are going to do the same thing with the long edges of the mesh piece of fabric. Fold in half, find the center point, and use a pin to mark the center point on both sides. Unfold the mesh piece and match up the center point of one long edge with the center point of the webbing, but then move that center point of the webbing in away from the edge of the mesh 4 inches. Pin in place. Then pin the webbing all the way up and down the length of this mesh piece 4 inches away from the edge. We are going to do the same thing with the other side, but instead of using the center point of the webbing, we are going to use the 2 raw ends and line those up with the center point on the raw edge of the other side of the mesh piece. Again, measuring in 4 inches. It's a good idea to make sure that your handles are not twisted, because this piece of webbing is going to end up being your handles. Make sure that the webbing is flat as it comes around in the U shape on both edges before you pin in place. Now we are going to sew these together. It's a good idea to go kind of slow just to let your sewing machine needle get through all of this thickness. We are going to start by lining the right edge of the sewing machine foot up with the right edge of the webbing. Make sure that you hold on to the threads as you start sewing. Sew forwards a few stitches and then sew backwards, and then continue sewing down the length of that edge of the webbing, removing pins as you sew. Once you are done with that side of that piece of webbing, go back to the top and line up the left side of the presser foot with the left side of the webbing, and then sew as you did the first half. Repeat this with the other side of the webbing. Now we are going to fold this piece in half. Match the short ends together with the right sides together. This means that the side of the mesh that has the webbing on top of it should be facing each other. Pin along both edges, not along the top. Now we are going to sew both of these ends together. It may be intimidating to sew over this mesh, but everything will work out great. Just remember to back up when you begin and end your seam. To make the false bottom in this bag, we are going to set the bag so that the side seam is facing us. Press that side seam straight down towards the bottom of the bag, creating a little triangle in the corner. Make sure that the side seam is going straight from the corner of the bag and that the pieces of the triangle on each side of that side seam are even. Then we are going to measure up 2 inches and place a pin. Create a line that is perpendicular to this side seam and pin in place. This is the line that you are going to sew when we go to the sewing machine. Repeat with the other side. Now we are going to sew along this imaginary line that we created with our pins. Make sure that you are sewing perpendicular to that side seam and reverse stitch when you begin and end. Do this on both sides. Now it's time to turn the bag right side out. As you can see, you've got a lovely mesh tote with a nice false bottom.